Well, guys, I want to thank you for having my wife and I out here today.
Amen.
And what did I do with my computer? There it is. So this is really an honor to be with you all. You guys are awesome and make this kind of easy, to be honest, because there's hunger.
Amen.
If you've ever spoken before to a group of people and they don't really want to hear it, I experienced that today. I'll get into that later. But I don't really want to hear it. It's tough, man. It's tough, and I thank you that you guys are just like, you want more, and you're hungry. And then the more you eat, the hungrier you get. That's how it works in the kingdom. So I want to start off. I'm going to ask my awesome, amazing wife to come up. And I'm going to let her share first, because if I don't, then she'll never get to share. So I want her to go ahead and we want to just share with you the vision of what God has called us to. And we'll get into more of that. But I want her to share kind of how this whole thing started in her and began to evolve into what we're seeing right now. So, Esther, take it away.
Thanks. Thank you. Well, hello everyone. My name is Esther. And yes, I'm very humbled and I'm very thankful for being here tonight. And even more so just with everything else that has happened in our lives, it's still, God just still continually blows my mind. And as much as He blows my mind, it's such a humility that comes with it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so grateful for Him. So I would like to backtrack a little bit, actually, way back when I first came to the Lord. By the way, Jay and I love to talk. Most of the time he does it because I just kind of step back. I'd rather him do it. But I'm thankful for my husband that he really challenges me. He really allows the Lord to stretch me, and he just puts me in the forefront when I need it. So I'm very grateful for him and his obedience, and just the husband that he's been as far as the tool in my own life to be able to stretch me and be a tool that God has chiseled away so much in me to be where I'm at right now. So I'm grateful for his obedience and his yes to the Lord for the times that he's called me out and that he's really put me in a place to where even to me he'll preach and he'll really just won't hold back. And so I'm grateful for that. But anyhow, so my walk with the Lord began 2 years before I met him. And I grew up in a home that was very evangelistic. My father was an evangelist in Mexico since his youth. And he evangelized through the mountains of Mexico from village to village. And then he came into the States with his big family that they put together. And so he pastored a couple of churches in the U.S. And so I grew up in the atmosphere and in the presence of the Lord my whole childhood life. Now, the only sad part about it is I never had that relationship with Jesus himself. So I just grew up kind of watching from the sidelines. And it just brought me to a place where I thought it was better on the greener side, on the other side. So therefore, I did not follow the Lord in my youth, in my teenage years. And so what I did is I ran. I felt like I was like Moses, running from the Lord. I did that for about a year. But the Lord was merciful enough to pursue me. And he actually pursues the sinner. He pursues even the one that rejects him. He pursues the hardest of hardest. So therefore, we cannot give up on the lost. We cannot give up on anyone because God himself doesn't give up on them. And so anyhow, so I'm grateful for him for that, eternally grateful. And so the Lord had to reveal himself to me. He had to have me encounter him to be able to have that one-on-one with him because I ran from him. So from that point on, I had to really hear from the Lord in everything. My husband, as he would tell you, it's not just a matter of him telling me, but God has to really speak to me to be able to believe anything of what's going on. And so what from day one, what I did is I went to the scripture. And I remember even going into the marriage with my husband, I told the Lord, because I had seen, growing up, I had seen a lot of couples where the wife was so lost in the shadow of her husband's walk And it's the same thing with kids. Our kids get lost in the shadow of a relationship of mom and dad's. And so they themselves get lost in that. And so growing up, I observed a lot, so I saw a lot of that. And when I first came to the Lord, I was kind of afraid that I was going to be lost. And so I determined, and I know that I've told my friends this, that I determined that I was going to be a very hard-hearted person, a very hard-headed person. My dad always said that I was hard-headed. But I needed to hear from God himself in everything, that I just did not want to rely on my husband's word and on my husband's relationship. I had to hear it from the Lord himself. And so that was from day one. And so, so God did. He began to show himself to me in a way that was just, it blew me away. He began to speak to me in dreams. He began to speak to me in visions. And that's how God assured me not only who he was, and not only did he reveal himself in such an intimate way to me through that he began to reveal his future. He showed me my children before they were even born. Every dream that he showed me from that point on just were like revelations of people, was prophetic dreams over people's lives. And there were people that I had no idea who they were, people that I would just meet months later, years later, pastors, and that was really hard. Getting a prophetic word for a pastor, and it wasn't a good prophetic, it was a good word because God was trying to bring freedom and bring light into situations in a pastor's life. That was really the hardest for me, was being able to speak. I'm nobody, so for me to be able to speak that, that was a growing step, a step of faith for me to take. But God used it as well. So among those dreams, God had given me a vision. And in this one, it's a long dream, but I'm just going to cut to the point. The bottom line is that this is 20 years ago. This was in 1999 when this dream took place. And I was getting so used to every dream and every vision that God showed me that when this didn't happen, it was just like, wait a minute, what's going on? It's not taking place yet. God, this is the best dream you've given me. This is the best vision. Why isn't it happening? So in this vision, we were in this high school, and Jay was doing a presentation of a film that he had made back then with youth, and it was about abortion, about a girl who was struggling with abortion. And so the film ends, and I'm walking in the gym because I was looking for him, and that's where I had found him, was inside a gym. I did not realize that it was a gym until I went inside. And so when I walked in, I see the film, I see Jay down over on the other side, the opposite side of the building, and I see all these young people. And the film gets done, they start walking towards me, and they start walking out the doors I came in through. So as they're walking out, I don't see Jay anymore, but I'm just curious to see all the excitement and all these kids just anxiously wanting to go, walking quickly to wherever it is they're going. So I walk with them. They walk outside, they go to around the corner, and there's this stage, and there's this worship going on. And the kids just all begun to fall on the ground, and they're crying and they're repenting. Some are worshiping, but they're all on the ground. And then I'm being moved by what I'm seeing, because this is something that we have always prayed, because we were always involved with youth. And so by seeing this in this vision, I know that it's not just a vision, because I know that what God is showing me is something that's going to happen. Because he's done that over and over many, many, many times. And so I was just accustomed to see God showing me something that was about to happen. So I'm excited in the dream, and so I'm like overwhelmed in the dream. I'm looking around, and all of a sudden there's all these people coming from all around the building outside. It was like in a neighborhood. The school was set in like a community in a neighborhood, that there were people coming from all over the neighborhood, old, young, little kids with parents holding hands, and they're just all coming to this one area right there at that school where God is just encountering people.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just overwhelmed because I know that's coming. And so I'm walking, and I'm just in awe, and there's these buses that are coming filled with people, and they're just being dropped off. And there's this old friend of ours, my husband's old friend, and he's backslidden. And I see him, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's coming too, And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, no, I asked you first. So he's like, well, I'm going there. I need to be there. And I'm just looking at it. I couldn't say anything but just cry. And I'm just walking, and that was it. I wake up. So I woke up and practically crying, and I tell him what I just dreamed. And I was so excited because, like, okay, is this going to happen next week, next month? You know, but it just didn't all make sense because we were not involved with the school. We had nothing to do with any kind of school, not even anywhere near, because I homeschooled my kids. And so we were not anywhere near the school. So then fast forward in 9 years ago, the Lord laid it upon our hearts that it was time for my kids to not to be homeschooled anymore. So we ended up in a school. Bottom line, we ended up in a school, and that was completely God how it all ended up there. But it didn't occur to us right at the moment because we were thinking of our kids, but we had no idea about this vision. This is over 10 years now that I had this vision. And, you know, it's in the back burner back there. You're not really pondering because it's already been so many years that I just feel like that didn't happen. And from that dream on, I've had some, but it wasn't like what it was before, where every dream was just coming to pass and it was happening. So it's been 10 years, it's been 20 years, over 20 years now or something like that. And we kept asking God, how is this? Nothing happened in the school. We're in the school and finally it just hit us. Okay, maybe this is the school, maybe it isn't. Okay, so Lord, we're ready. We're ready for this. Let's do it. So we began to meet with some kids, prayer, outside of chapel. And we had little squirts here and there where some were excited and everything, but nothing at all. And so now we're like being torn again because nothing is happening. And we're like, Lord, but then on our own personal life, everything began to just, layer after layer, it just started, everything began to come apart in our own personal lives. My 2 daughters, we have 3 children. We have 2 girls and 1 boy. The oldest is a girl, then there's a boy, then there's a girl. Well, my 2 daughters decide that they just walk away from Jesus. They're living completely prodigal lives. That's what they've chosen to do. The church that we were part of for over 25 years, completely just, we were moved out of there. Our relationship between family was broken. It's been over 4 years, almost 4 years, and I still haven't spoken to my family. And the cluster that we belonged to for the whole marriage life that we had was just completely just gone. Gone within a year. He lost his grandma that same year. His parents ended up moving out of the state that same year. So we went from having this enormous cluster of family, spiritual and family, blood family, just completely all gone. And our own children in the next 2 years. And then nothing with a dream. And so we questioned a lot for 2 years. We sat a lot for 2 years. We had to be healed a lot for 2 years. There was a lot of healing that needed to take in our spirit. A lot of foundation that God had to completely just put back together and get us back on our feet because he wasn't done. So then 2 years ago, my husband began to work on this film. That film, which again was in that vision, at that time it was about abortion. With a film that brought us to this point, it was about homosexuality. And from that year on, it's been nothing but just, and like, it went from nothing to like, whoa, like what? Hold on. And it's just been amazing. It's just been completely amazing, the transformation that had to take in our hearts. But I understand that we had to be in a moment where everything completely was just nothing but Jesus.
Yeah.
It was just nothing but us and Jesus. No family to rely on, to fall on. No church family to fall on. No children to use an excuse for whatever. No, it completely had to just be Jesus and us. And that's really at the point where he brought us to. So then we began Jesus Nights. That's what the Lord led us to because he began to bring us people that were hungry and were wanting more. And that's where we were at this point. We went through the process of 2 years of sitting under a pastor and getting what we needed to. And we felt, okay, These people are coming to us, they're telling us they want more. And there was teenagers and adults. They were meeting 5 times a week and they still wanted more. We're like, what? What? Okay. You're all right, let's do it. And we're crazy enough that let's do this. And so that's what we did. So it began, that in itself, oh my goodness. Jesus Night began in 2019. In October of 2019, and that was our first launch. We had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea who was going to show up. We had no idea of nothing. We're like, okay, God, we're just saying yes to you. Don't know what it looks like, but we're going to do it. Okay, fine. We did it. The first night that we put out Jesus Night, we had over 70 people show up at the event, and it was just a moment that I just couldn't believe. And all of a sudden, that vision, all of that came to us. At the time then, God gave me a passage, the Valley of Dry Bones. That the reason for us to be at the Jesus, to say yes to the Jesus moment, the Jesus Night moment, was because God wanted to raise up his army, was calling his body to wake up, was calling us to rise up. It's time. And the beautiful thing that I'm learning from it and that I'm still applying to our lives is that in that same passage, not only does God breathe his breath into those bones, but he provided, he caused the joints to grow, he caused the muscles to grow on that body, and that's exactly what we're seeing in the natural. As we're taking this next step. First was Jesus Night, now our next step was this vision that God gave me back in December. At that time we went to the Sean Foyt events. We joined him at a couple, 3, I don't know how many, but we joined him for a few events. And I'm like, okay, God, now what? Okay, you've taken us from Jesus Night, now we're going to Sean Foyt's, now what? Now what? Now what? You know, this is just getting more and more amazing. And at that point, that's what he showed me. I want you to cover Illinois. I want to cover Illinois. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? You know, and the only thing that came to my mind was my father. And I know that I haven't shared this part with Jay, but that was the only, because it's so simplistic and is so profound to me. Because even though I ran from the very thing that my father was an example for, I couldn't understand it, but it just makes sense. So my father, what he would do when he was 17 years old, he gave his life to the Lord. He was in the mountains. They had no electricity, no running water. All he had to move around other than walking on a horse was a bicycle. And that's because somebody gave him this bicycle that he was driving from village to village in the mountains with his guitar in his back, and he was preaching the gospel wherever he went. And as simplistic as that was, that's exactly what came to my mind when God says, I want to cover Illinois. And I'm like, okay, well, does that mean we're going to go from town to town? Is that what that means? So when I shared it with him, then God showed him, my husband, how that looked like, or somewhat, you know, what the first step was. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. Let's see, am I forgetting anything? So that's really where we're at, is we don't know all of the details, but God has been revealing them. Just like he said, that he was going to cause that muscle to grow, or that tendon to grow, or that nerve to grow. It seems like it's that to me. And what we're doing is that very slowly God is just adding like the parts that are needed. He's not showing us the whole picture, because I think we probably would freak out and say, that's impossible, we can't, you know, or we probably would run. I would run. So he's just allowing us to take step by step, and he's adding a little bit here and a little bit there. And I think you all are part of it. It's the body. It's not Jay and Esther. It's not Jesus, the night people. It's the body of Christ. So, okay, I talked too much. See? God bless you all.